Welcome to an interactive discussion on the memorable bubble experiences. To mediate the talk, please welcome the CEO of Y&S 1847, a sought-after hotel guru, Mr. Merril Yu.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking time to join us this morning on our discussion of memorable bubble experiences. Let me introduce my co-stars on this chat this morning. Richard Raymundo, who's the Managing Director for Colliers, and Colliers is the leading consulting agency that handles real estate, and in particular, certainly hotels, hospitality. In fact, we go way back, way back. And really, Richard is really the preeminent, hyperbole spared, leading voice and light in the hotel field. Michelle will be joining us. She's presently stuck in traffic. Michelle is the CEO for Vitamin B, which is also a leading company. Her background and specialty is in branding. And they handle branding works for most of the major conglomerates like Ayala, Robinsons. So between the three of us, a little bit of background, we've known each other for certainly 13, 14 years, and they are good friends of mine. So we decided that to get together this morning to talk about memorable bubbles, because with all the sometimes heavy traffic of negative and scary and frustrating and worrisome and health issue news we get, there are good stories out in the market. So our chat today are about the good stuff within our own bubbles that we've experienced that we'll share with you. That being said, right, the companies or restaurants or whatever we mentioned by name today, none of us are receiving anything like sponsorship or anything to say it. This is purely from our experiences as consumers, as guests, as patrons, and that's what you're going to hear today. We're going to be talking among ourselves for about 30 to 40 minutes, which leaves plenty of time for question and answers. So we encourage you to please participate and ask questions, because that's what we're here for. So without much further ado, so Richard, what are the good stories? Also, Richard and I happen to live in the same area.
Yes, we're neighbors.
So what's new, latest, and good?
Well, you know, I remember we spoke about the lockdown. That was in March or April. Remember that where nothing was happening. We were all locked down. The economy came to a halt back then. And we were discussing what was happening and how tough it was. And then our business was really impacted. Real estate was impacted back in April, May, before it opened in June. The reality is real estate, you know, is still done pretty old school. You know, the way we do trippings, the way we do site inspections, the way we do billings, the way we do notarizations, all of that, we're all old school, and we were caught unaware, and we would go, okay, how do we do this now? And then slowly, we you know, the real estate industry managed by virtual tours, by no way is the activity back to last year's. You know, we are probably what, 50, 60% down in terms of transactions. And you'll see that in all of the filings for the big listed property companies. They're what, 50% down in terms of revenues, 50% down in terms of sales, and that has that trickle effect. And so our business has been similar. But what's interesting, when they started opening in June until now, we have been seeing some glimmers of hope, some you know, pockets of activities. As you've said, those little bubbles that we've seen. And so that's good news. We've been seeing some movement in the market. So that's very good news.
What about restaurants? Let's talk about restaurants. Some restaurants are really getting hammered, but some are doing very well, right? So in your in your time invested, right? What are the restaurants that have done well in your list?
Merril, I think the restaurants that were able to do very well are the ones that pivoted quickly. And sometimes this is what I told you a couple of months ago. Sometimes bigger is not better, because the smaller companies were the ones which were more agile, which were more nimble. Not even just in restaurants, even in retail, the smaller ones were able to pivot quickly to deliveries
Yeah.
or online sales, or let's say for restaurants, deliveries, online sales, and even frozen food. The others were still going, no, we're going to do the same way that we're doing it. Remember, there were even restaurants before that would say, we will not do takeaways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And during the pandemic, they said, okay, we're now going to do frozen, and you can now enjoy the food at home. And then they gave the instruction on how to do it. And surprisingly, I tried it. I was surprised that, the taste was there. The experience was a bit different, but that was a very good pivot. I thought that was a very good pivot. The one that I was surprised with is, we all love those eat all you can samgyup and eat all you can, those tonkatsu wherein you can eat all of the veggies that you wanted. They were able to pivot. There were some wherein, you could get it in a pre-packed meal. The experience was still okay. Of course, not as good as when you're there, but then you feel that you're safer at home eating that pack. And the pricing went lower. There were some packs at 200 pesos, 300 pesos, anything below 500, I think it's very good. So that was the thing, is the ones that pivoted quickly, the ones that said, this will not end in a couple of months. When the pandemic started in January, we were hoping that it was like SARS, wherein it would have petered out by summer. Like SARS petered out in June, July because of the heat back then. This virus is a bit more stubborn than SARS, and it's here to stay. So the ones that said, okay, we're gonna live with it. How are we gonna deal with it? How will we operate with this? And I think that is what the private sector is now going into. Wherein a lot of the private sectors are now banding together and saying, we need to operate, but we also need to be safe for our employees. We need to be safe for our customers. How do we do it? How do we move forward? What are the protocols? And we're all learning, the protocols last March versus the protocols now, have improved. We've all managed to work around it. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's a really good point you raised, that there's some people that were able to pivot very quickly and then literally do very well.
Yes.
We were talking back in April.
Yes.
Pacific Bay, right? This website, Pacific Bay, was opened up to primarily sell seafood, but over the weeks and months that they've evolved from seafood to beef to pork to dry goods. And an amazing thing that I'm still shocked that the site has been always so easy to navigate.
Yes.
And also you can pay cash on delivery so easy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And they deliver anywhere within Manila, free the next day with certain.
Correct. The credit card penetration in the Philippines is low. If you ask Lazada or Zalora, is it about 80% of their 75-80% of their transactions are cash on delivery? So that gives you an idea that it's not. We have one of the lowest penetration. But what's interesting right now is there's a higher adoption of digital money. So if you look at GCash right now, the numbers that went up, if I'm not mistaken, did they say about 20 million subscribers right now on GCash? If I'm not mistaken, in one of the news articles. That's impressive in a matter of months. And what they're even saying is the adoption of e-money that we're doing right now is the one that they were expecting 5 years from now. So everything is getting adopted faster now, and then that's very good, and I think that's what we need.
And then I think to your point about, for food again, right? The frozen stuff actually tasted
Yes.
pretty good. Now, shifting to fresh food, we were so happy the other month that we were saying, we have a craving for sashimi. If there's anything during these times, right? So we are really excited to find out that Serena is still open, right? And not only that, so we said, okay, do you do takeout? They said yes. So we ordered our favorite sashimi. And since then, I think we've ordered like every week. But the quality is so good. When you open it, they've invested in packaging. So when you literally unpack it at home, they've separated the sashimi order into two with the garnishing. It's pretty, the packaging, the black bottom, clear top. A lot of thought went into not only the food quality, but also how you unravel it to enjoy the experience. So that,
and the instructions on how to prepare it at home.
Yeah.
Right. They give you okay, this is how you do it. That's interesting because you need to put thought in that. You need to have the brand identity and all of that, from the packaging to the way, your tone of how do you tell your customers this is how to handle it when you're at home. It's all part of the experience. So the ones which are very successful are the ones that did not lose sight of the experience, of the branding and all of that.
The French couple that have the Sauce de Market on the weekends,
yes.
Michel. Okay, interesting. His business since the COVID has been better than last year because, as you said, they pivoted to doing hitting their database and doing pre-orders for delivery on Saturday and Sunday. So between their business has always been Sauce de Market, Legazpi Market, and catered events. But now they've shifted it. So between whatever losses or the diminished revenues from the weekend market has been more than offset by advance orders and deliveries.
Correct.
But he had a database before the pandemic, right?
That is what is important, Merril. I think the Philippines is a laggard when it comes to client management system. Good example is retail. If you go to, let's say, Hong Kong, it's already part of the system wherein if you buy something from the really mass market Gap up to the high-end Cartier and Louis Vuitton, they will get your number. It's simple. You don't need to get everything. You just need the number, an email, and a name.
Yeah.
Or sometimes a birthday. So, you do get to greet them and give them some extra during their birthdays. But if you really think about it, it's really those very simple data points that you need. So Gap in Hong Kong, they do have the iPad already near the counter. While you're paying, you can, join their club. Same for Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and all of that. That every time they need it, they can now use it. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, we are a laggard in getting that information. And it's not because of data privacy. Data privacy in Hong Kong is even tougher to get information than the Philippines. So I think that's when people are now realizing I should have gotten, my database of my clients, because they will not be able to go to my physical store. And as you've mentioned, look at that. All he had was a bunch of names to ask them, what do you want? And that is now what we're seeing in home businesses. Those are all based on a database of a small group of people. It could be, a group of buyers from Ayala Alabang. They have their own little platform, or Salcedo Village or Legazpi Village.
Yep.
But if you really look at it, it is that platform or database of consumers or client management that you need.
And I think the recurring theme is going to be that if you were sort of smarter or a little bit ahead of everybody pre-COVID, right, your chances of being agile and flipping and doing new things is even more evident post now that we're into COVID.
Correct.
And end of the day, if you had, so in other words, when Michelle comes on board, if you had a brand that was famous for delivering consistency and whatever, right, the brand will generally tend to continue when tested now that during the COVID times.
Yes.
Even for my dentist, right, of all things, my crown got knocked off, I think in March, end of March. And I said, oh my God, right, all the dentist offices are closed. But I frantically texted my dentist, Dr. Sibilia here, and she came in. I mean, so it's almost like, you know, at the time, right, the fear is, why would you go to a hospital because you're worried about catching.
That was the peak of the fear,
right?
March, April, May.
Yeah, so just like the what ifs, right? So, but you know, she came in and, you know, and I said, oh my God, thank you so much. And it's not like she makes a lot of money by taking care of my tooth. I think it was like 500 pesos. But the thing is, she took care of my concern immediately. Text late evening when they popped at dinner the next day. He goes, can you come in at 10? Sure, 10, fine.
And again, Merril, look at how the medical community pivoted. My cardio doctor, I do e-consultations. So there's a platform that you download an app wherein you book your appointment. They give you your prescription via the same app, and then it links you to a GCash payment system all in one. Yeah. And it was even a better experience than going to the hospital because I didn't have to wait.
You know, I hurt my shoulder at the end of May, and it was very hard to go to see a bone specialist. So I found out you can do all these online, this and this and this, but most of them was like you prepay. But then, of all things, DOH has a number as a website, and all you have to do is email them and tell them specifically which specialty of medicine that you're looking at. And you know what? A doctor that specialized in bone texted me and continued to catch up with me until my shoulder healed. No charge, and extremely gracious. And I'm saying, oh my God, if you go to the hospital, how many hours, how many visits to get the same thing?
Merril, so, I think Michelle is on, but she's in as a viewer.
Okay, let's ask Christelle, can you reach out to Michelle and help her get online? Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so Christelle will be on it. Cool.
Yeah.
Yay. So there's Michelle.
Yay.
There you go. So, hi. Okay, welcome, Michelle. We've introduced you already, and we sort of are talking about you without you being here. So
I heard some of it.
So Michelle, what are your good bubble stories about who's done well, memorable stuff?
Actually, what's interesting for me are a lot of the small businesses. They've really stepped up and found ways around delivering to the consumer, like despite ECQ, despite logistical, I wouldn't even say challenges, but a stop in logistics. They just really found a way. And you know, I read this article. I don't know if you saw that, Richard. And it was an article in the Straits Times in Singapore, how there was this industry of delivery services. So everybody basically with a motorcycle went online in Facebook and offered their services, and people would just, you know, book them randomly. Please pick this up, and they would earn like 1,000 to 1,200 a day. So I think that's quite interesting from both the small business part and these individuals who just found a way, you know, to fill in the gaps when everything just stopped, right? So, you know,
usually sometimes bigger is not better, right? Because the smaller ones were the ones which were more agile and nimble.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But
so,
you know, yeah. Go ahead, Michelle.
In my community, there are like bakers who, you know, who have like a delivery schedule in our community, and they're like 10 condominiums here, right? So he
And
would, for
Michelle, we
example,
were talking about the loyalty because,
yeah,
and reach out to those buyers and say, how many orders do you want? And what
exactly.
I was telling Merril is, in the Philippines, we've been a bit of a laggard on client management systems. We haven't, kept a database of our clients, particularly for retail.
Exactly, exactly. Now these people have, and as random or organic as a Google sheet, they
Yes.
have the data, and then they're constant, with sending text messages. This is our new product. So every, they can deliver. They can kind of probably already forecast as well their sales, right? And people are saying, after ECQ, will you still be doing this? Because my kids now love your ensaymada or something, right? So it's an interesting dynamic because that makes you think now, do I need a retail space?
Mm,
Do I just need one retail space? Do I
right.
need five? Right? So I think it's
It changes the
initiated.
equation, right?
Yeah. So yeah. So there are a lot of actually little brands that were able to just figure out a way.
And
So
Michelle, think about it. Could you imagine the rise of the ube pandesal?
I
Mm.
actually thought that it's invented during COVID. It's
Diba? Exactly.
COVID innovation. So
I I now have this thing that I align it with the COVID, that it was a product that was born out of COVID.
yeah. My sister lives in Singapore and it's the same. All the Filipinos there all of a sudden started buying ube cheese pandesal.
Right.
So ube cheese and cebada.
Yes.
So yeah, so I think it's brought about creativity for some people, ingenuity for others as well. Uh, to some extent, if you have scale right now, it's harder to move. You know,
Yes.
your systems are set, and then yeah.
And
So
your contracts, sometimes the contracts don't even let you do online sales, right?
exactly,
That's the thing.
exactly.
Hmm. Um, okay. What else? Okay. There are a couple of questions. Let me throw it out to you guys. First one is going to be more information. What is the impact on real estate with the planned exit of Pogo this year? What do you think?
Okay, so the Pogo industry has leased about a little over 1 million square meters of space in Metro Manila. That's big. That's
Mm.
in a span of 3 years. And that's very fast. So they've been taking up about 300,000 square meters per year of office space. And the effect on that is, you have take-ups in residential, and then you also see some take-ups or sales for high-end retail. Uh, you've seen the knock-on effect of all of that. Our data recently has shown that about 120,000 square meters have been vacated from Pogo. So it's still a small percentage, but that's still significant considering it's a short period that we've seen that. So what has been the effect? You're now seeing some vacant office space. There's an upside to that because some of those office spaces are PEZA spaces. So the BPOs could take that up because there's not a lot of BPOs PEZA. The next effect is residential. We've seen some pre-terminations of these contracts from these companies which folded up. And of course, you're also going to see some softer sales for, the high-end retail that they go to. So those are the effects that we're seeing. The bigger players are operating. They're hoping to ride it out, but the ones which were affected are the smaller Pogo players. So that's the one that we've seen.
Okay. Another question. This is probably for both you and Michelle. How do we ignite customer intimacy where most buyers are on virtual money like Gcash?
Michelle.
How do we challenge to gather that data?
Mm.
Sorry, what is the question? How do we
ignite? How do we get more customer intimacy where most of the buyers are on virtual money, right?
Everything's now online.
Yeah.
I think, okay, I think those are two separate issues, at least for me. Gcash and virtual money is payment, right? It's fulfillment. So when you want to engage customers, you're not looking at the fulfillment side of it. You're looking at really delivery and how to reach out to them. Of course, fulfillment is important, right? You need to make that easy for them and available. But you shouldn't think about that. That's a separate issue. Really, today is when they're at home, right? How do you keep in touch? How do you remind them that you're there? And everybody's on digital, so it's quite interesting because they're just in one place. So you just need to be there, right? I think advertising is a bit extreme already because, to be honest, they probably see a lot. And with digital, the thing is, it's a fast burn. When they see an ad, they will see another ad in in a span of 6 seconds, right? So how do you have content that is interesting for them, right? How do you deliver products and services also that are relevant to them today, right? There's certain products right now that, people aren't going to buy just because they don't need to. Like, for example, office wear, right? How many people will buy office wear right now? They don't know when they're going to go back to the office, right? Like my sister is saying, even if she likes something in the store, by January, there's a new collection. She might as well buy it in January, right? So you need to pivot that, right? So you need to understand your customer, right? What's their new scenario? And you need to deliver something that's, relevant to him today. Fulfillment, that's part of it, of course, right? But those are two separate issues. You need to be able to be relevant today.
Yeah.
And then keep that constant communication.
Yeah, it's the relevance right now because you go to Instagram, you go to Facebook, you are bombarded with so much advertisement, and everyone just turned into digital marketing right now. Mm-hmm. So they're all spending and sponsoring, and you see all of those sponsored ads. There's a lot of clutter out there that if you don't stand out, if you're too wordy, or the quality of the copy or the quality of the visuals is poor, you will be passed, and then people will go, okay, next. As Michelle said, it is a fast burn. So the first thing that you do is you do need to get noticed first, and you need to be relevant. Your product need to be relevant right now. If you're selling suits, that's going to be tough. No one really, or when you're in a webinar, some people are in suits and in shorts for their talks, right? So that's going to be tough. But if you're sportswear right now, if you're loungewear, then, you're going to do very well. The next one is the fulfillment, because particularly for the first-time buyers, it's this distrust. It's like, are you legit? Coming from, let's say, Facebook Marketplace or Instagram, or even, Lazada or Shopee. The first thing that you say is this legit? Am I gonna get the same product that you have online? Because we've heard horror stories of, let's say, a box, and then they get a tiny little box, right? But then when you hear that they paid 50 pesos for it, it's like, are you kidding me, really? This big box you're expecting for a tiny thing, right? So you've heard the horror stories on that, or the great switcheroos on the product. So that's another one. The next one is on the delivery. Some of the bad experience comes from the delivery. One, it takes too long. Sometimes it gets damaged. It wasn't packaged well. And then the last one on the fulfillment is the payment. That's why a lot of people would rather do cash on delivery, because of the distrust. But once you get the trust of that seller, that's when they go, okay, I can pay with my credit card, or I can do GCash from the upfront, and just get my delivery. It's that process, but you have to get the trust of the consumer.
And can I add a story? During ECQ, right? I actually switched my laundry service. Everybody was doubtful of everybody else, right? You would go to the grocery, and then you would alcohol everything you would buy, right? And it's a lot to do that for every single item. So laundry, I I don't have a washing machine here because, I'm too lazy. So I have it laundry. And all of a sudden I saw on Instagram a laundry near our community, but they had COVID protocols and they explained it, right? So our people are, in PPE, and then they had photos, and then we have UV and whatever. And then what's interesting is they also have rules for you as a user. So they sent me, because I inquired, right? And they told me that I needed to give my laundry in a washable laundry bag because they would shove the whole thing in the washing machine. If your laundry bag was not washable, they're gonna throw it away. And you know that because of course, it's the handling, right? So I thought, it was well thought of. And you know what? I've stayed with them ever since. So my old laundry service has been, hey ma'am, we're open. I didn't anymore. Right. So again, that's about being relevant, right? They've adjusted and then they've communicated and they've delivered. So,
Michelle, this is the thing. People's habits will change because of COVID. And some of the habits will be long lasting.
yes. And we have a Viber community group among all the 10 condominiums. So somebody said, could you recommend laundry services? And people were recommending, and I recommended. And because I'm a branding person, when I explained it, I said, the reason I moved to this one is, look, they have COVID protocols and blah, blah, blah. So people started messaging me on the side saying, can I have their number? So again, you be relevant, you deliver what they need. People are at home right now, right? Not many people can deliver. So if you can deliver, then you be the one. And that person, like I did, talk, to the community of 10 condominiums.
Yes.
So.
And I think also, if we go to the fulfillment part, really the payment, the ease of payment is going to be the final clincher. Because if it is too painful for you to pay, either you have to do a bank deposit, you have to actually go to the bank, you're going to say, you know what, forget it. Because sometimes the mistake a lot of companies make is that, yes, they're relevant, yes, they have a nice product, but they make the payment terms convenient to the company rather than to the consumer.
Yes.
Right?
Remember, Merril, when we started this discussion in April, there was that hamburger chain.
Yeah, I know.
Brand
Still, they haven't changed.
But they weren't cheap. But then you had to do a bank transfer and then get your own delivery service to get it from them to be delivered to you. I'm like, really, for a burger? Yes, it is a burger, but right.
And they still haven't changed.
For your viewers, so it would be interesting. So what we do with brands is we look at the customer journey of your brand, right?
Yep.
So the thing is, as much as we're marketers, all of us, we're actually customers, right? Every single one in this whole world is a customer. At one point, you bought something. So just put yourself in the shoes of your customer buying your product and look at the end-to-end experience, right? Did you make it pleasurable? Did you make it easy, right? Is it something you want, right? So it could be pleasurable, but like you said, in fulfillment, it was difficult. Would you stop? If you stopped, your customer would stop too, right? So just, if you look at the customer journey now, it's very important because like we said, a lot of systems changed, right? So for the consumer, right, these journeys could be, again, more problematic, like, having your burger picked up, or it could be like the laundry service, right? It could be seamless. Like they thought about it more than I did, like even having the washable bag. So I switched. Yeah. So that's a very interesting exercise, the journey.
Perfect. Speaking of journeys, here's another question for us. Which strategies and tools do you recommend for the hotel industry to overcome the recession during and post-COVID? So,
Michelle, what do you think of? Because they're starting to open now.
Yep.
Yeah. If
I have seen strategies before wherein they did the pre-bookings. Remember that when a couple of months ago, there were pre-bookings and then you can use it after the COVID to help the employees. That was interesting. Then there were the pivot on their F&B outlets to do deliveries and even frozen items. So that was done. Even the bars, like I think Shangri-La's F&B and bars would do the pre-mixed cocktails and then have it delivered to their customers. So that was interesting. But what long-lasting strategies are you looking at?
I think for survival right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Merrill and Richard, right? I think it's also good to look at packages and rates.
Yes.
Why? For example, in my city, Makati, right? If there's a COVID positive patient, asymptomatic or not, in your floor, the entire floor gets locked down.
For 2
It
weeks.
happened to me, yeah. I panicked, like complete, like anyway, panic. So it happened to my cousin in another floor as well, right? So last minute he checked a nearby hotel because just knowing you can't step out of your door for 2 weeks is a bit overwhelming. So he looked at the hotel and at the special rate already he was considering it, but it was going to cost him, and he said 75,000 for 2 weeks. So in the end he just decided, okay, never mind, I'll just submit to the lockdown. But it will be interesting, for hotels serving communities to give special packages.
Yes.
Yes.
For things like that. If if you're not full anyway, right? And I think again, if you do that for your client, they'll remember you, right? So there, I think opportunities like that. If you're a hotel in Makati, you know already that happens in condominiums, and there are how many condominiums here that would get locked, right? So you could offer 2-week packages, right? Because in the end, they will eat there. You don't even need to deliver out. They're gonna eat there. You will get auxiliary revenue, right? And loyalty. So you could think of things like that. In Singapore now, the weekends are full. Their staycations are booked. You can't get weekend, because people have been locked in for such a long time, right? So as people are beginning to lessen their fear, it would be nice, I think, to have staycation packages that are reasonable. But again, through all of this, you need to guarantee safety.
Yes.
So like my laundry service, you need to, be able to be clear to them how that you can keep them safe, right? So.
But I also mentioned to Merril a while ago that, because we have a project in Boracay right now. So I have a colleague who went to Boracay yesterday. And the Boracay flights are not every day. It's every other day because there's not a lot of people and they're using smaller planes. They used to have this protocol that you need to get a swab test, not a rapid test, just a swab test, which is valid 72 hours. And then over the weekend, they changed that to 48 hours. You know how difficult it is to get a swab test that comes out in 24 to 48? Because the typical swab test is how much? About 4,500. That's not cheap. If you want to get an expedited swab test, that's 8,000 to 10,000 bucks for it to come out within the 24 to 48 hours time frame. My colleague had to be swabbed twice because her first swab test did not make it by a couple of hours.
Wow.
So her nostrils had to be assaulted again. And her throat had to be assaulted again.
I think there has to be a sooner than later, there has to be a uniform protocol that works for everybody, because what's happening now is that each LGU has a different hotel. My nephew's in-law is a seaman, came back to the Philippines to visit his family, arrived in Manila by plane, was quarantined for 14 days, then flew to Iloilo, was quarantined for 14 days, then took the bus from Iloilo to Santa Barbara, I think, which is like 40 minutes. And guess what? Quarantined for 14 days, right? So, it took him 42 days to go home. And this only happened about end of September, end of August, right? So, and so I think a lot of it, justifiably, that health is an issue, but the key to rebounding the short term, like every other country in Southeast Asia, is domestic tourism. And the sooner there has to be a congruence between government, private industry, and LGUs together to figure out how to satisfy the health safety issues, and yet make it easier for the traveler to travel domestically, right? Because the sooner that happens, then
there is demand, because I heard that the bookings of the farm in San Benito is doing very well, because they had the perfect mix of wellness, and then their accommodation is not in one building; it's in villas, and the facilities, the pools are all laid out far from each other. The density is very low, so you have projects like that that could be very well for these times.
Yeah.
So I asked my friends who always travel. So of course we would be traveling domestically first before we go international, right? So we had a poll: what would make you travel and where? So I remember one of my friends saying, if she would travel and look for a resort that has a nurse or a clinic, right? So, or a resort or hotel that has a clinic or a hospital nearby. I mean, in the city, right? So, of course, we know there are islands and whatever where there's no hospital, so those are a bit, it's going to be a bit tougher. However, if I were a resort, right, as a group, I would do something where we would make sure that we would have a nurse or something like that, right? Because this is still good. The fear will be there for around 2 years. So again, you need to provide for their needs, right? So I thought that was interesting. I have another friend 2 weeks ago who went to El Nido, took a vacation, and she was telling me what's interesting is the vacation itself was wonderful. The flight terrified her, right? Because of, like Richard saying, you're now using smaller planes.
Correct.
And the foreigners were not wearing their masks inside the plane. So, she goes there and she's worried. She's inside the plane and it's, air conditioned and whatever, and they're not wearing their masks. And then she gets there, okay, she's relaxed, and then she gets on the plane again. And it's the same. Even if she did the swab that Richard said, twice, but in her mind, the foreigners in the plane were not wearing masks.
So Michelle, do you think that domestic travel by car, let's say 1 hour, 2 hours, that's the one that can easily, take off? Let's say going to Tagaytay, going to Batangas, Laguna, Cavite, Quezon, there's a lot of possibilities there.
And what's interesting is, so a client of mine told me, because they own planes, the charter plane business hasn't gone down the entire time. It's actually gone up. So people are changing their planes to newer planes, and other people are buying their secondhand planes. So again, the trend there is how do you say, controlled travel. Like it's your car, it's your plane. Boats are the same, yachts and speed. Sales have been good, right? Because people are finding ways to travel where they have their own bubble. They can control certain parts of the travel for safety, or so if I like airlines and whatever, I mean, again, the whole journey of a customer, they need to be more serious about maintaining, having their passengers wear the mask and things like that, because other people get scared. So
for the bubble, how long do you think that our times now are going to go into? There was a question, do you believe the bubble will last until the end of next year, 2021, or beyond? So that what changes need to be made now? So what do you think?
It's not going to go away quickly. I think that any possibility of a an improvement probably later next year, third quarter, fourth quarter next year. But we're gonna live with it until next year. This will not go away. And it's not just vaccine.
Yeah. Great.
Because there are other countries, even though there's no vaccine right now, they were able to bring down their numbers and have consumer confidence back. The biggest problem is when consumer confidence and business confidence erodes, because that's not easy to get back.
Mhm.
So, and it's not necessarily just because of a vaccine, right? You've seen other countries wherein they managed the numbers, they flattened it, they kept it low, and manage it moving forward. And there's been still some spikes after that. So it's a never-ending battle. Once a vaccine comes out, the question on budgets, on is there enough budget for everyone to get that, or at least a majority to get that? Production, logistics, that doesn't happen overnight, right? So,
And
Mm.
I mean, the vaccine is kind of also rushed, right?
mm,
I don't think people will want
Well,
to
rush
be
to,
in line for the vaccine.
Yeah.
So yeah, vaccines take a long time to develop, right? It doesn't happen in 1 to 2 years.
correct.
So
Correct.
one is
Michelle, if a
only
vaccine is
fear.
there, the question is there enough people that would voluntarily say, I want a vaccine, I want to get inoculated?
yeah.
Yes. And
And how long
aside
that'll take. Yeah. I think
And
for the hotel question now, right? It's a little bit of what was covered by both Richard and Michelle. It comes down really now in the short term is branding, right? It's going to be that if you were a good hotel that had a very defined market and were doing well pre-COVID, right? You will do well. One, because international brands or local brands have higher standards, and they're the first people to adopt the the new health standards that are never going to go away. The challenge will be for independent hotels that really have to gear up longer because they were sort of probably not quite into the hygiene game as quickly. So they not only have to get into the game, but they need to develop the expertise to be able to understand it, roll it out, and execute it. I think for the hotel industry, if your hotel was just making its living by being the overflow from other hotels or other businesses, you're going to have a hard time, right? If you're not defined as a business entity, right, you are definitely going to have a hard time, because you're making your business on literally what other people couldn't take, the overflow. They will continue to have a very hard time. So.
But Merril, let's talk about rates right now, because the room rates in the Philippines isn't high.
Yeah.
And it particularly, even before the COVID, right? We would have, 5-star hotels at what, $200?
Yeah.
The highest that we got was what, about 250, less than 300.
Yes.
And now that they're going to reopen, the rates that I've been seeing is what, about 200 plus dining vouchers. Some at 1,000, 1,500. So that even lowers your rate. What's the feel of the market right now with the rates?
I think it's not only with hotels. You see it in retail, right? If you go through the malls, there are no additional discounts that you did not see in March.
Yes.
Nobody has dropped the clear inventory. It's almost like they're just holding pat. I think with hotels, there's always going to be the natural tendency from an owner operator point of view to say, okay, let's open, but let's open and charge as much money as we did pre-COVID to a degree. We'll give them a little bit of a discount. But I think the approach is going to be, okay, what are my costs, right? And because you can't compare, anybody at this point in time that is still comparing your performance to 2019 has really lost the plot. Because when COVID hit, you can forget comparisons to previous year because basically you're working on zero, right? Anything more than zero, you grow your revenues from zero and you apportion the resources to take care of that growth in revenues. I think for hotels, they will have to figure out what their base cost is, what their branding flexibility. You know, you don't want to see, say, a Shang go from $200 down to, you know, $99, right? You know, that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, if they're going to go pretend from $200 to $192.50, the market's going to say, oh yeah, oh wow, big deal, right? So there has to be an attractive rate to get people interested, whether we stay two, get the third night free, stay two, get 2 nights free, however you work it so your branding equity doesn't get compromised. I think they have flexibility to do that. But
Merril,
it has to be attractive.
what I'm afraid of is this type of rates or pricing gonna have a lasting impact? Because previously in 1997, after the Asian crisis, that's when the hotels did the two-tiered rate. Remember, there was a US dollar rate and a local rate. But then we all knew that, you know, if you had a foreign guest, you can book it for them and still get the lower
Local
rate.
rate.
That was the problem when the rates just couldn't go up. After 1997, the rates just stayed very low.
Yeah.
We were all quoting in pesos already, right? No one was doing US dollars. Then the internet happened. You couldn't hide a two-tiered rate anymore.
Right.
You will only have one rate, and it would pivot, you know, probably 5-10%, a bit higher, a bit lower, depending on the operator. And that was it. And
Yeah.
since then, our room rates are pretty low compared to the region. Bangkok is low, but their occupancies were high. We were slammed by low interest rates with an okay occupancy rate.
Mm. Yeah, I think that the challenge for us now with the rates is, yes, Philippines, certainly the hotels here have lower rates for similar levels of hotel than anywhere in Asia. We are really the cheapest. The challenge is going to be that, one, the Filipinos don't like paying a lot of money. They don't, you know, once you leave the Philippines, you don't mind paying Hong Kong prices,
Yes,
prices,
exactly.
prices, you know, there's no issue of rate or pocket requirements when you leave the country. But if you're going to spend money within our country, nobody wants to do that. So that's one. Second point is going to be, unfortunately, because of the way that we're restricted from overseas travelers now, we have to turn the faucets on with the local domestic travel. So the rates, I think, at the end of the day, are going to have to give probably more. And like anything else, what's going to happen is everybody will hold their breath. And the minute one of the big players is going to say, you know what, I'm going to lower, then everybody else is going to follow suit.
Yes.
So,
Michelle, why is it like that? Why is it when Filipinos are in the Philippines, we don't want to pay for the same brand, same brand. When we get out of the country, then they go, okay, I'm going to spend that much.
Wait, yeah. I have a little bit of a different take on that with the two of you. And maybe because Merril comes from the hotel industry, you come from real estate, I come from the consumer side, right? So looking at it from the psyche, I mentioned this to one of our hotel clients before, Richard, right? The thing is, you can't compare us to the region, right? We cannot get rates of Singapore, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. To Filipinos, even to non-Filipinos, those countries are a different level. We are Bangkok, Indonesia, you know, we are this level of country, right? So for me, you can't compare those two. Right? You can even see the hotel offer in those countries are just different from what we have here, right? So that's one. Second, to be honest, up until maybe the last 3 years, we didn't really have good, you know, a good hotel experience, even like the foreign brands, right? Up until the Conrads came in, whatever, our, you know, the Intercon at the time, the Dusit, they were, I'm sorry, but they're like 20 years old. You know, I remember my sister, she works in Singapore, she was billeted in a room in one of these, you know, Makati hotels. She didn't want to touch the curtains, right? She thought it was sticky. And these are one of the big names. The regional CEO of their bank, right, had to fly in here, and he only wanted to stay in, at the time, Makati Shangri-La, there's no BGC, right? It was full. She called me. They were begging me if I knew someone, but it was really full. And he was billeted at the time at the Mandarin. He goes in, opens the room, and says, "Get me out of here." That night, they had to fly him out. We didn't even have the standard, that was available in Bangkok and Indonesia of these hotels. So
Yeah.
we can't ask for those prices. We
So
don't.
Merril, is that an issue of upkeep?
Yeah, I think
Let's say like the Mandarin has
my,
now as old, grand old hotels like the Mandarin in Hong Kong, right? You have the Landmark, which is newer, and the Mandarin, which is older, but they charge the same price. So are we saying that a Mercedes Benz in Hong Kong or Bangkok is not the same Mercedes Benz in Manila?
yeah, I think that actually we're more aligned. We're more aligned with Michelle's points, right? And we've covered that before, which is basically going to be that we can't charge more. We can't charge comparable prices with other capitals because the quality of our 5-star is not really a 5-star. Our 5's their 4, our 4's their 3, our 2 is their 0. I mean, to the degree, that's the disparity, which is a good point. I mean, remember the old Mandarin Oriental here? It was so old. It was so old. Literally, it was only the concrete on the exterior that kept the thing upright. And the same thing when they blew that up, it should have been blown up years earlier. And then it's correct point. You can't. The market isn't naive enough to pay world capital prices for a product that they know is not world capital. So for your point, it'd be like having a Mercedes-Benz body, but everything inside is like a jeepney.
Filipinos travel more now, guys, right? So they know.
Yeah.
They know.
Plus the internet. You do see those in the internet, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
they will pay. How many people in the last 3 months have been to Amanpulo?
Yeah. Or El Nido.
They will pay for Amanpulo.
They will pay. That's true. To the point of Amanpulo, they will pay that amount, like $500 to $1,000 per night. They will.
Same with the farm at San Benito. They will pay. But you have to give them the level that you can't dumb them down, right? You can't dumb them down anymore.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore.
I think also the final point is that Philippines, we've always marketed ourselves as being the cheapest alternative in Asia, and we're also
Which shouldn't be the case, right?
Yeah. And we're not. We do have world-class beaches and everything. We do have very good resorts too. Not all of them, but we do have some excellent representatives of hotels in those areas. So, I think we should stay away from trying to price ourselves internationally because it only hurts us, right?
Before we go, can I just mention something interesting? I think a few years ago, you asked Richard and I also to speak at a conference, and everyone is asking me about Airbnb, right? That was the topic du jour, right? I think what the pandemic has done to the hotel industry is it's eradicated that competition.
Exactly.
That would have otherwise obliterated a lot of people in the hotel industry. Yeah. So with that now gone, because in the next 2 years, many people won't want to live in individual apartments. You're not sure how it was cleaned, who stayed there, and all of that, right? So with, the biggest threat nearly gone for 2 years, I think for a hotel owner, right? You shouldn't see the downside. Yeah, you should see that as an opportunity and find your mark.
Exactly.
Great point. One of the last questions, Richard. I think we're talking about the pace of development for hotels has obviously slowed. Well, what about the BPO market? Are the places like Central Business District still hot, or BGC still hot for development for BPOs?
It will still be hot because of infrastructure. You know that in the Philippines, that where all of the businesses, the buildings, the retail, and all of that have higher values is because of infrastructure. Whether it was put in there by the developer itself, like Rockwell, to improve the infrastructure, or geographically, it's at an advantage, but it is infrastructure led. So it will still be the same areas, but there are new areas that developers are putting in the infrastructure. Quezon City, for instance, Arca, for instance. The new connection of Skyway from south to north in a couple of minutes, that will unlock values. San Jose del Monte, at the end of the train line of the subway, that will unlock values. So it will still be that. It's just that the BPOs right now, while there is movement, there is take up in the office segment, admittedly year on year, we are down. But there is some movement. We saw the BPO companies which are closing deals with companies which are thriving. Let's say your client is something like a Zoom. You know, you're going to do very well right now, and that's going to need support. So those are doing very well. So there are pockets of opportunities there.
Okay, last question. Is this hotel show event a sign of things to come and change in attending habits for trade shows? Well, care to take a crack at that? Well, you know, yeah, Michelle.
No, I think you're the best person to answer that.
No, I think we all agree. I think that in this era of social distancing, you know, the meetings market in person will be a slower return. And right now it's artificially constricted by health issues, logistics of travel, yeah, a fear in the market of those two. So I think that even when the market probably early next year, first or second quarter, begins to now get comfortable with regularized protocols, hotels for the hotel rooms will be in demand. I still think that the meetings market is going to be a longer recovery. Certainly not, you know, if by the end of next year, that would be a good sign, yeah. But certainly not in the meantime. So, I mean, you know, last point on that, right? I mean, a cousin of mine runs, a nephew of mine runs one of the big IT companies, and ever since COVID, he's had 7 meetings that he had to attend with other senior executives. Guess what? 7 tests. So every time he leaves home, he has to go get the test so he can meet face to face with the other executives. So as long as that happens, that's a prevailing concern by one party or the other. That's the thing, right? It's not you as an independent. It's whoever you're going to be sharing your space with. If there's a general concern about health, it is going to really, then there's no question. It's just not going to really happen yet. So, right?
Great.
Okay, on that note, Michelle, Richard, as always, thank you very much. We've had our usual enlightening, fun chat. To our audience, thank you very much for taking time to partake in this. Please take care. God bless, and we'll see you guys. All right?
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you once again, Mr. Merril, Mr. Richard Raymundo, and Ms. Michelle Barretto for sharing your time and knowledge with us. Share with us what you learned by tagging us on Facebook or Instagram at Hotel Suppliers Show. You can follow our presenters on LinkedIn for more insights about the hospitality industry. Mr. Yu will be back later at 1 p.m. for the impact of COVID-19 on the Philippine tourism industry with Ms. Hannah Pearson. Don't forget to check out Hotel and Restaurant Suppliers in the exhibition hall and follow our social media pages. See you later!